Hey everyone, my name is Jared Gingras, Managing Director of the Real Story Group, and I just wanted to welcome you today to something a little bit new from the Real Story Group, something we're calling the RSG Rewind. And this is episode 1 for September 30th, 2016. And what we'll be doing here is every few weeks or so, we'll be bringing you this RSG Rewind audio and recording, which will give you a sense of what you may have missed over the last few weeks from the Real Story Group research team of analysts. So we'll be doing a fast-paced review of some of the blog entries that you may have missed, some of the new research releases that you may have missed, and highlight some of the latest findings and some of the upcoming events that we think you would find valuable and that you may want to attend. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's topics, and we'll just do the rewind rundown on the right side of the screen. You can see which topics we'll be tackling this week, but we'll start with web content management or portal software. Should you use your web content management system as a portal? And my colleague Apoorv Durga wrote about this week because this is a topic that, quite frankly, we've been getting a ton over the 15 years we've been around. But it used to be, should I use my portal as a web content management system? But in recent years, we've been getting the question, should you use your web content management system now as a portal? And, generically, in a vacuum, we always say you should be using your web content management system as a web content management system and your portal as a portal. But there are some use cases that do make sense for you to use your web content management system as a portal. But just because you can doesn't mean you always should. And Apoorv this week really gets into what scenarios are right for using your web content management system as a portal, and what scenarios just don't make sense to do that, and could lead you down a rabbit hole of really trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So really, I encourage you to check out Apoorv's post this week and dig into the web content management evaluations that we've produced recently, where we really show where you should be using your web content management systems. They all have strengths and weaknesses, and some of them have some strengths in portal areas, but some just certainly do not. So definitely check that out. Another post by Apoorv this week was around Salesforce. And I know for many of you on listening to this recording, Salesforce is a major technology platform in your organization. And undoubtedly, as you grow with Salesforce, you end up putting a lot of documents within Salesforce. So, you put those NDAs that you sign in there, you put your contracts, you put your proposals and your bids that you've sent out, all within Salesforce. So Salesforce, in essence, becomes a bit like a document management system in and of itself. And so, because document management wasn't really the core focus of Salesforce when it was created, it was created as purely a CRM system. Organizations come to us and say we're struggling with using it as a pure document management system, and so organizations are really confronted with a couple different options here. And as Apoorv highlights this week, you can use your Salesforce for document management, but you're gonna trade off some functionality that you would get from a pure document management system. And so the other alternative is to implement another separate document management system and then integrate the two systems. Now, that integration, as with all integration, can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people and create some very different experiences across the board. So we encourage you to really understand what you're getting into, what the limits of document management within Salesforce are, and then explore the myriad of options you have from a document management systems perspective, and then really investigate what you mean by true seamless integration, and what kind of experiences do you want your employees to have when they're working within Salesforce so that they can seamlessly get to the documents that they need. And so you do have a lot of options. That's the good news, but be careful when you make these decisions, and the most successful organizations are making these decisions up front before they get too tied down to having too many of their documents already within Salesforce, and then they're kind of stuck. Okay, next topic is around SharePoint, and 2016 brought about a new version of SharePoint, but I think, as many of you are aware, and something that we've written about quite a bit recently, the bigger story around SharePoint is the platform's massive transformation to the cloud. And then, so what does that mean to you as a enterprise customer, particularly those enterprise customers who are thinking about putting together the best possible digital workplace for your staff? And what Tony, my colleague, is going to be talking about on Wednesday the 12th is thinking about SharePoint a little bit differently, and thinking about SharePoint and giving SharePoint a new role within the new digital workplace. And I think many of you will get a lot of value from listening in on the 12th, from 12 to 12:30 Eastern time, and where Tony will really get into where SharePoint is best suited going forward. So stay tuned for that, and please visit our site and sign up for that, and I think you'll get a lot of value out of that. Speaking of Tony, this week he chose to write about one of his favorite topics over the years, and that is around TeamSite. And I'm sure, again, many of you are very familiar with TeamSite. Interwoven was one of the big players back in the day when Tony founded this company 15 years ago. He was talking a lot about Interwoven at the time, and some of you may be surprised to know that many of you are still on TeamSite to this day. And so we are getting a lot of regular inquiries around how can I get out of this relationship with TeamSite. As you've probably been aware, TeamSite has gone through quite a few interesting acquisitions over the years, and let's be honest, some pretty controversial acquisitions over the years, and that's created not the greatest environment for TeamSite customers. So we're advising many of our clients to gradually separate as you can from that platform, but it's so embedded within many of your organizations that it can be hard, and we get that. And so we're here to help you through that counseling process, and we'll help you wean off TeamSite as it makes sense. But the good news here is you have a lot of other options when it comes to web content management systems. There's a lot more modern and much more viable alternatives in the marketplace that you should be considering, and we'll help you find the solution that's the right fit for what it is you're trying to do, if it makes sense to get off of TeamSite at this point for your organization. Another webinar that I want to quickly highlight, one I'll be doing next week, October 5th from noon to 12:30 Eastern time, is something we're calling Stop Comparing Apples to Dump Trucks. It's kind of a silly title, but nothing is more frustrating to me than seeing organizations go through a technology selection process and get to a short list where they're comparing vendors that just quite frankly should not be compared to each other. And certain vendors that have really no chance of solving the problems that organizations are trying to solve, and being on short lists is really causing organizations to waste a lot of valuable resource time, a lot of valuable money in the time that it takes to go through these cycles and evaluating vendors that quite frankly just don't have a chance. And so I'll be talking on Wednesday about a new product from Real Story Group called the Real Quadrant Shortlist Generator, which is designed to get you to the right shortlist, the right shortlist of vendors that all have a chance of winning, right? So that you can spend your valuable time doing the right amount of due diligence on vendors that really are potentially a good fit for what it is you're trying to do. And I hope you'll join me on Wednesday, and I'll take you through a behind-the-scenes look at the Real Quadrant Shortlist Generator, and show you how you can try it out yourself, and see if you can get the right shortlist for your organization. Next topic is a post that we did this week from my colleague Kashyap. He's talking about this major announcement from Adobe and Microsoft that Microsoft Azure will be the strategic platform for all of Adobe Cloud's applications going forward. Both these companies are calling it a massive, massive milestone. And Kashyap questions this week, is it really a big deal? What is this? This might be a big deal for Adobe, or almost certainly a big deal for Microsoft. But for you as a client or a customer of these two companies, does it really matter? And Kashyap gives you the pros and cons and what you should be looking out for as a either current or future customer of these two organizations. But I think you'll find that Kashyap feels it's going to be much ado about nothing. So check out his blog post this week, and I think you'll find some interesting insights there. Finally, let's wrap up with looking at some upcoming conferences. This is the conference season, particularly here in the US and Europe. My colleague Teresa this week is in London at the TFM&A conference, and next week we'll be actually in Stockholm for the Findability show, and then she'll be back in London for the MarTech Europe show the first week in November. And then that brings us to November 14th, the week of November 14th, which is a huge conference week for us, and I'm sure many of you. It's funny how all these shows seem to be happening on the same week, but I really want to call your attention to the DX Summit, which is put on by the folks at CMS Wire. Tony will be in Chicago talking about a variety of topics, particularly around the digital experience and the right way to select digital experience technology. I'll be in Washington, D.C. for KM World, talking about a few digital workplace topics, including looking at some predictions and how to do a social collaboration technology health check. And then Teresa will be out in LA for the Henry Stewart Dam Conference, talking about her fundamentals of digital asset management and looking at DAM in 2016, what will last and what will crumble. And then Tony will be joining me for the latter part of the week back in DC for the SharePoint Symposium, which we'll be chairing for, I think it's the 9th or 10th year that we've been doing this. And what we try to do is give you a really different sense of what other conferences do when they talk about SharePoint. This won't be a cheerleading session, or it won't be a gripe session either, but it'll really aim to give you the real story about where SharePoint should be used and where it shouldn't be used. So if any of these topics are of interest to you, I really hope that we get a chance to see you in person. And if you're attending one of these shows, please feel free to come up and introduce yourself. We'd be glad to have a conversation. And with that, I'll wrap up episode 1 of Real Story Group's Rewind, and I invite you to join us again in the next few weeks. And with that, I say have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.